All right, yeah, really appreciate everyone coming out to the Friday morning talks. Huge. It's really nice to be up here at Play by Play because it's my favorite conference. They gave me a chance back in 2019 as my first conference, so always really grateful for that. And yeah, I'm here to ramble about leaderboards for 20 minutes. First, a little bit about me. This is what I look like without a beard. I am a senior technical designer at Dinosaur Polo Club. I've worked on Mini Motorways, worked on Mini Metro, and some exciting new things as well. Like Rick said, I'm making a game called S.H.A.P.E Deluxe with a new studio, Dead Teapot. Thanks for code for that one. I haven't formally announced it, so shh. Outside that, you'll see me longboard dancing, you'll see me playing with a yo-yo, all that fun stuff. But anyway, I'm here to discuss this question: what do leaderboards cultivate in our little game development garden? And I thought I'd start by going through some context, like what's a leaderboard? So in its most simple form, it's a ranking of who played a video game the best. They started with arcade machines and pinball machines, where sometimes it's just like the best score for that machine, and other times it'll be like that classic list of 10 names, and you put your 3-character initials in there. Those are really fun, honestly. And even in this most simple, basic form, it's still forming a metagame, which is gameplay outside of the core game loop. And since then, leaderboards have innovated in a lot of ways, really. With the internet and persistent storage, we can have the best score achieved in its game for its entire existence across the whole world, which is kind of bonkers when you compare that to like an arcade machine in someone's garage. Yeah, so every player who's ever played will have a single entry in this giant list. With multiplayer games like Dota and Counter-Strike, we'll have like MMR or rank, which is just a veil over a classic leaderboard, which is still just a ranking of the best players against some metric. Duolingo uses their weekly leaderboards. Check out that +1 year streak. And what's cool about this is that you're only ever in a really small pool of players. And this makes winning and advancing a league actually feel feasible and encourages competition, but doesn't have you permanently striving for top scores or anything like that. Simulation and puzzle games rank your solutions in multiple ways against multiple metrics using histograms, obfuscating the best player into different categories. This way, a player can choose which metric they want to focus on and be the best at. And why am I talking about leaderboards today? Basically, I kind of love them and hate them at the same time. And can we make an arcade game without leaderboards is something that I'm constantly asking myself and all of the designers at Dinosaur Polo Club as we're working on the third game. And this talk is just an exploration of that question. For those who don't know, Mini Metro and Mini Motorways are these like simulation puzzle games where you do this classic arcadey style of gameplay, where you play the simulation, you lose, and then you've got a score. And for this discussion, I thought I'd go through what we've done with leaderboards in the 10 years since Mini Metro's release. This is what the Mini Metro leaderboard previously looked like. It's got like the top 10 players, plus your score if you're not in the top 10. I'm not in the top 10, I pulled this from someone's video. So if you're not in the top 10, it's also got a percentage of how well you did relative to all the other players that submitted a score. Jamie Churchman goes over this in more detail in his 2017 GDC talk, but the part that I wanted to steal from that is that it's really important that the leaderboards are outside of the main UI flow. So here you can see that the main buttons, like play, mode, are big and chunky and have these little arrows which indicate that when you click them, you're going to move somewhere. The leaderboard button is relegated to a smaller icon. It doesn't have an arrow, and so it kind of breaks these UI paradigms. This is opt-in. It's not going to appear when you finish a game, but you're very subtly prompted to. There's a button once you're in the leaderboard to limit it to just your friends, so you can see how you compare among your social circles, but that's about it. It's subtle, it's outside the main UI flow, and only present for those who care about it. With the development of Mini Motorways, we were on a bit of a time pressure, and this will make anyone who was there for the launch cringe, because this is the screen from when we launched. It was the most basic thing we could have. We're on a time crunch, like I was saying. It's just the top 5 scores plus your score, and we really weren't happy with it. I've included it here because it's interesting to see where we started, and through this talk, I'll take you to where we went. So what's my beef with leaderboards? There's three main bits that I want to talk about. And actually, real quick, who has worked on a game? Hands up if you've worked on a game that's had a leaderboard in it. All right, this will make this real easy. Let's start with you're all going to love this one, hacked scores. Woo! Giant unattainable scores so that you can have 42,069,666 as a number on a leaderboard. Cool number. This is another one that was a real pain point, is post-launch balance. Changing the balance of the game globally is a lot harder. Our games heavily rely on creating a simulation and then making content that just plays with that simulation. Having like a huge number of player leaderboard entries, plus every user having a personal score, meant that changing the gameplay, even just a little bit, like if we want to change the acceleration of cars, would make all of the previous scores either unattainable or pointless and easy to beat. We didn't really have the tech for tying scores to a game version, but even if we did, having your personal best score wiped or not achievable again isn't that great. So in a way, gameplay improvements were kind of held hostage by the success of the game. And lastly, the vibes were off. Seeing the skill ceiling immediately before playing sets an expectation on the player that kind of sucks for most people. I mean, like, look at this screenshot. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 24,739. It's a bummer. And it's way more fun to go in without a specific goal and just be intrinsically motivated to enjoy the game before being told that you suck at it or that there are ways to improve. What we wanted is that leaderboards can cultivate competition, external motivation, community, but we don't want that to come at the detriment of players who are just trying to have fun watching cars zoom around. So what do we do about it? Today there's 5 things I want to talk to you about. 5 fun ways to improve your leaderboards that we did with the Motorways leaderboards since launch. Number 1 is we revamped the flow to address the vibes. The game select screen was entirely redesigned, with the most relevant change being that you can see we hid the leaderboards behind a separate tab, and like Mini Metro, we also wanted to encourage personal goals by putting your personal best on the front of the card. This way, before you go into a game, you're seeing a score relative to yourself rather than relative to every other player who played the game. This better manages the player's expectation and about how they might perform before they play, and it also makes it become the fully opt-in experience we wanted. This is something that even highly competitive games do. Now that I'm up here, it's weird comparing Neon White to Mini Motorways, but here we are. Neon White, for those who don't know, is a fast-paced FPS kind of puzzle game that is designed for speedrunners. It has really interesting mechanics that I'll go through for how they handle their leaderboards. Firstly, they don't let you view the global leaderboards until you've beaten a certain rank. So if you're just there for the vibes, you can just cruise along and ignore that even other people have played the game at all. Secondly, you can also, when you can see the leaderboard, they don't show the top 10 by default. They only show your surrounding scores or your friends' scores. You can then move the window up and down, but it's actually kind of hard to see the top 10, which I think is great. Thirdly, they have a secret 4th red rank that you won't even learn about that exists until you achieve it, which further hides this insanely high skill ceiling. So all of these let the players who are inherently competitive play the leaderboards while letting those just along for the ride not be discouraged by the Sistine Chapel of skill ceilings. The next thing we did was another easy fix, which is just hiding the hacked scores. And we wanted to do this in a way that wouldn't require too much maintenance. So if a score came in, so we'd pull all the scores, and if any of the scores were above a certain threshold, we would simply not show it to the player. But the cheeky thing we did is we would show it to the person who submitted the score so they think their score's on the leaderboard. All the scores are still there in the backend, in the Steam backend, for example, but no one can see them, so it's really not much of an issue. Just this little bit of data cleaning makes such a huge difference. And so although Mini Motorways seemingly doesn't have an upper limit on the score you could achieve, we ramp up the difficulty pretty severely after a certain point. I see Dylan laughing in the audience. To make it way more likely to happen that you'll game over. In theory, if you had infinite resources, you can make it never game over, but alas, cars will always jam up, no matter how much infrastructure you add. Then come talk to me after if you want a different ramble about urbanism. Anyway, timed challenges were another thing that we added. Both Mini Metro and Mini Motorways had timed leaderboards like daily challenges, and once the day is done, no more scores can be submitted, immortalizing those top 10 scores. This means rank number 1 on July 5th, 2024 is permanently the best player of that day. It's a very specific category, but you also kind of get a specific prideful feeling knowing that no one can ever bump that score off compared to when you have a normal persistent leaderboard and it's there for as long as no one works out how to play better than you. Another benefit is that you're only going up against a smaller segment of players. So they're strictly current and engaged players. If you look at the persistent leaderboards, they can have people who picked up the game once, were way better at it than you, and then never played the game again. And it also makes these leaderboards more relevant in the age of like live service games where balance can come in and change things, or new content is added. And lastly, the hackers, who needs them? Because the score is going to be up there for 2 weeks at most. So that's a nice, easy win there. This is my personal favorite. I really pushed for this one, so I'm attached to it, which is the photo mode, but also it displays your score. So yeah, we added the photo mode shortly after launch. It's a way for you to take memories of your city at the end of the game. An important feature we wanted for that is the ability to both show your city, but also your score. So you can customize your screenshot however you want, and score is one of those options. These screenshots with scores exist without the context of leaderboards. There's no rank, there's no percentile, only your score and the city that you're proud of. It's up to you to decide how you want to share or compare that with other players. And the colloquially known gay Scrabble game and meme-generated gubbins handles this perfectly. When you finish a game of gubbins, you're instantly sent to their postcard generator, which is the screenshot on the left. It's a place where you can use all of your discovered words, all of the gubbins and stickers to make a fun, shareable postcard or naughty meme if you're that way inclined. And what's genius about this is that the default background of a postcard is the scorecard, which is how this one exports. It's pre-populated with your score, your top words, the date, if it was a daily game, and the gubbins. So you can see the moment that I finish a game, I can just hit save or share, send it to someone, and it shows them that I got 28 words that day, which is pretty cool. Darcy of Studio Folly says that the situation allows them to cater to both their functional and performance-oriented players, as well as the creative, expressive players. The score chasers will share their score with just one tap the moment that they finish a game, and the creative players, they're probably going to spend their time on it anyway. Additionally, because there's no leaderboard, the score isn't burdened by the context of other players. Leaderboards only cater to those score-chasing players, with the dedicated players going off and just making their own leaderboards anyway. But the postcard system, having score-related elements, kind of just satisfies both, which is great. The last and most significant feature I wanted to talk about is the histograms. These are the most prominent change that we made, and we even added the feature back to Mini Metro after it had, for the 10-year anniversary update, after it had regular leaderboards for a decade. And this brought, honestly, a lot of improvements. Number one, it gives players more information. They wouldn't have this information otherwise, but a standard leaderboard only lets you see how far away from first place you are, whereas by introducing the histogram, you can see how far from the skill floor you are as well. Number two, it hides the insanely high-scoring players behind a percentile, so they'll see that they're in the top 1%, and everyone else will just see this little trickle. And as a nice bonus of that, again, hacked scores, you never see them again, which is just great. That's another added bonus. Number four is we don't actually even show the top 10 scores anymore, so what was previously the default is now not even visible unless you're playing a daily or weekly challenge, which is where we do want to encourage the competition. So this is us being intentional about where we want competition to be. And part of that is if you are in the top 10 and you view the surrounding scores, you will also see the other top 10, which means we're encouraging competition for those who are truly competitive. We're not the first to use histograms. Lots of other games do histograms too, and in way more inventive ways, like Polybridge, Word Factory, or Zachtronics games like Space Game. And each one, interestingly, has slightly different approaches. So Polybridge has 3 metrics, and then it has a leaderboard specifically for cost, giving both different ways to improve, as well as a canonical best player. Word Factory displays the global top score, but doesn't have leaderboards, ensuring you see the skill ceiling, but you don't have all the fluff of other usernames. Zach Barth in his 2013 GDC talk about Space Game describes how they can be used as tools for the player to better optimize. Seeing the full range of skill means that players can decide where they want to rank themselves. Do they just want to have another go, or do they want to be better than their friends, or better than the majority? Do they want to look at the best score and then sit among those best players? It's up to them. Lastly, when there is a maximum numerical entry, like golf, ignore that one. Then multiple people can have the very same score with no way to be better than each other. So leaderboards just stop making sense. For these styles of games, knowing that there is some better solution knowing that the solution exists allows players to want to optimize. So all of these changes have improved our leaderboards substantially and allowed us to use leaderboards to cultivate the garden that we want to grow. We didn't fix everything. We never had a proper solution for wanting to substantially rebalance the game, but that's something we'll just try with the next game. But our leaderboards have given players extrinsic motivator, gives them bragging rights, a sense of community, but we go out of our way to ensure that it doesn't detract from the casual audience, and we just want people to be able to enjoy their little car game and share their creativity and their scores. But even with all of these improvements, there's always been this one particular story with Mini Metro that's really stuck with me about the weight of a leaderboard entry. We were contacted by a person about their dad, an avid Mini Metro player who took a lot of pride in consistently placing in the top 10 of the daily challenge on Steam. He'd suddenly passed away, but with a few weeks after his passing, the family member had seen that he'd played Mini Metro on the day of his heart attack, and they asked us if we could send them a screenshot of his final daily challenge leaderboard placing. We obviously did our best. We made a special build, we pulled the data to make it all go in, and we sent it back to them. And he placed 7th in the daily challenge, July 19th, 2019. And this story has always really stuck with me as a testament to the weight and the presence of something as small as a leaderboard entry. It becomes a true immortalization of your skill against every other player in the world in your weird little niche game community in this brief moment in time, and nothing's going to change that. And I think that's really cool. So coming back to this question, can we make an arcadey game without leaderboards? I feel like it's less about not having leaderboards and more about being intentional about what you want those leaderboards to cultivate. We've seen so many more options than a traditional top 10 list of usernames and impossible scores. If you want to cultivate sharing and creative bragging, then making the UI flow go straight into gubbins. If you want to cultivate competition, but only for those who want to opt in, then just add little gates, like in neon white. If you want to cultivate player-driven optimization, then histograms softly let players decide how far they want to optimize. If you want to cultivate personal drive, then prioritize showing the players personal bests, like in Mini Metro and in Mini Motorways. There's so many options for leaderboards, so if you're deciding to add leaderboards to your game, then step back and ask, what do I want my leaderboards to cultivate? Thanks.